So again, shaders here in 3D. First we're going to just use the default object. Just going to zoom in here, reduce my camera speed a bit. So we're just going to work with a small object. That's good. Get rid of that. Anyhow, that's just a regular old gross standard sphere. Nothing to really worry about there. Actually, let's just bring that in a bit. Now, work with shaders. You're pretty much going to work in your texture block here for the beginning. The first thing you want to do, make sure you've got your object selected, then load a texture. Now, when I first load, it opens to the default home directory for textures here anyhow. I'm not sure which texture I want to use. I think I'm just going to try this one now. Sort of a technical texture I did a while ago. And now I want to get some blending on that, so I'm going to set the flags to 0. You don't have to, but it sort of smooths it out. It looks a little nicer. Blend mode 0 is fine. It actually really just defaults to 7 inside anyhow. So that's what you're looking for your base layer. Now to load your next layer, simply click here because it's going to pull from the same folder, and have a look for the normal map of your texture, which is going to be a funny purpley blue thing like this. Now this can't go in the same texture channel, so you do have to put it to a new layer. In this case 1. We're going to use the same coordinates because it's the same size map for the same size mesh and all around. Blending really doesn't matter for here, it just shows how we're going to see it, but the shader program is not going to care. But if you look, you got a sort of funny iridescent blue sort of look on the ball or your object now, and I mean that's kind of interesting on its own. But what we want to do now is the shader we're going to work with actually can support specular and reflection maps. So I'm going to look for the specular here. Here we go. Here's our specular map. And again, it can't go in the same slot, so I'm going to set that to 2. Blend is the same. We're going to apply that. So just darken that in a bit, which I'm just going to spin around. It looks pretty good. That's my opinion. What I like to do is I don't like to do things over and over again. So I'll just make a copy in the main palette here so I can jump back to that in a heartbeat if I ever have to. And then what we're going to do now, there's one more texture we need to open, and it goes into a higher layer, but this texture lives inside the shaders directory itself for now. So I'm going to grab the default reflection and open that, and this actually goes up in layer 3 here. Blend, it doesn't matter. The reflection map makes it look kind of funny because the reflection map is a very special type of map. It's a cube map, and it uses environmental mapping once the system gets up and going. So I'm just gonna get that. I just like to do this so I can always step back rather easily. We'll get into that later. So now we're looking at it, it's ready to go. Funny enough, the tab we were just in is where we want to work. So what I'm going to do here is we're going to get a shader. I happen to have saved my favorite shader, one of the included shaders with Nuclear Fusion, right in my texture folder. Now, so we've loaded it into the system. If I left click, it's going to apply it to the clipboard object, which gives you a little bit of preview of what you can expect. If you right click apply, it goes directly on the object. If you come in here and get direct, it will pull a copy of this. So I could revert back. That's simple. Just double clicking on those, or I could go set direct and it'll go there, or you could set the clipboard to this. Set clipboard, set direct. So anyhow, that's our shader. If you can see it, it's makes a nice shiny chromy looking kind of ball. Looks very metallic, futuristic, whatever you want to call it. So that's as easy as setting a shader up. Now there is a current bug in Nuclear Fusion that is being worked on, and it's pretty much been hammered out. And right now P3D has some workarounds in place. First thing you want to do, go to your save options. In this case, we want to make sure we're outputting at least 4 layers. Make sure you hit enter. You can cancel this and open it again just to make sure it's at 4. Now we're going to save this, and it's going to ask us where to put it. Right now I want to overwrite this particular ball. This is my test ball. Yes, I want to replace it, and yeah, we want to put the textures in the same directory. Now there is a copy of that shader in that directory, but what happens when we load this now, and I'm just going to step out of it. I'm going to move our original over here. We are going to open, not in replace mode, but if you notice, it looks pretty darn good. It's hard to see on this, but you're going to see in some of the other ways that the shader can be loaded. You might find with some darker mixed textures and whatnot that the reflections don't look perfect. They're very darn close, but might not be 100% perfect. But anyhow, that's a quick look at some shaders. I'm just going to quickly knock up another one here because I'm kind of half interested, and it'll give you an insight. But here's a neat thing. Once you've got a surface made, let's say we make a cylinder, and for some reason we got a very basic cylinder, but that's fine. There's our cylinder. We can go into our materials here, and you can set that shader directly onto that object. It's that quick once you've got the shader set up in your palette. It really is quite fun and quite easy to build. But let's say we wanted to make a new shader. I'm just going to go ahead and leave that cylinder selected. Let's go into level. Here's a neat feature, get. That's going to show us the texture for the base level, the diffuse level for the cylinder, and let's have a look. I have a different, a little more darker, more technical shader, so we're going to set that. Now, the diffuse layers change. The rest of the shader is still the same, so it's using, at the moment, the wrong bump information for the texture that's there, which is kind of interesting in itself. I'm just going to hide the edit gizmo. And we want to go to level 2, or the next level is actually, remember, it's 0 indexed. Hit get, and we're going to grab the other normal map. And again, we're just going to apply this normal map. It doesn't make a difference. Now sometimes the shader will detect that change in normal map and be ready to go. Sometimes it won't. So you can't always count on that. We're going to go to level 2 here, or the actual third texture in the bunch, and we're going to look for the specular that goes with that. So this actually is a darker diffuse and a brighter specular. So we go here, I'm going to set that. So now we have our specular set. Now we can't be sure that that's really ready to go just yet. It looks pretty good. We don't actually have to go and change the reflection, because it's going to use the same reflection map to get the chrome effect. So let's go into materials and just get that direct. There's a difference right there. What we can do, just for fun, I'm going to select that ball versus that one, turn the bounding box on so you can see what I'm working with, and set direct. Now what we've done is, of course, we've allowed the shaders to swap their the brushes to change. Now you can see the shader is working just fine. If you wanted to reapply a shader, right-clicking the name causes it to reload from file, and right-clicking this will make the actual shader file apply directly. Now, if one wanted to do some work directly on the shaders, you can go into that shader directory, and here's our our shader that we were using. I actually happen to be using the one that was saved in the texture directory here, so there should be an FX file in here somewhere, or no, sorry, the meshes directory somewhere in here. Okay, so open with Notepad. I know you can't see it all, but that's fine, and you can come down to some of the tweakables. So you've got your light settings. Now it reads the lights from from Nuclear Fusion if it can, from the default scene, but you can change your different settings. You can change your specular powers and your float. So say I want the bumpy, say I wanted to be more bumpy, or reflection intensity. If I don't want as much reflection, we could drop the reflection down to half. Okay, and file, save, and right click to apply it. Now I want to make sure see, we're pulling that from the wrong spot. Meshes, there we go, right click, there we go. See, we lowered the amount of reflection. That looks pretty good, but say that reflection is a little too low. Maybe I want it actually around 9. Just save that. Come back here, right click. See how easy that is to edit and update a shader. Striking effects. Now when you edit a particular shader, you edit all instances of that shader that came from that directory. So that's also good to note, that if you want to have a shader in a directory with a particular mesh, do some changes and effects on that shader, keep it unique in that folder with that mesh. That way, if you change that particular instance of the shader that came from that folder, Nuclear Fusion is going to keep instances of that same shader separate. Might have the same code, the same file name, whatever. The actual true directory, the full path name, is how Nuclear Fusion keeps track of shaders which. So we can actually go into materials here, grab a copy of that shader, and you can see it actually looks different than the other two. If I go here and set direct, it'll actually change. That's a little other trick that we'll get into a little bit later. Anyhow, thanks for watching. I hope this helps you out and shows what you can expect from Nuclear Fusion shaders. Of course, again, when you go to save, make sure that in save option, number of UV sets for this particular shader is required to be 4. Alright, it has to say 4. Don't worry about any of the other advanced flags. You don't need this. Okay, so again, UV sets 4 for this particular shader. Thanks for watching.